Hi, this is History with me, Dan. Today, there aren't any big trees in the middle of the block on the south side of Arch Street in downtown Hartford, Connecticut. But over a century ago, a famous tree stood right here. No, not that tree. If you're thinking of the legendary Charter Oak, it stood over 1,000 feet southwest of here. The tree I'm talking about was the Ledyard Elm, which was a landmark on Arch Street for nearly a century and a quarter. So what was the Ledyard Elm? To tell that story, we have to head 100 miles to the northwest to Hanover, New Hampshire, the home of Dartmouth College, and go back in time all the way to 1773, just 4 years after the college was founded. That April, John Ledyard, a freshman, felled a tree and carved a dugout canoe. He then set off down the Connecticut River, leaving behind his studies and an unpaid tuition bill. The restless Ledyard had already alarmed the college authorities when he disappeared for 2 months the previous year to hike through the New Hampshire woods. This time, the determined Ledyard paddled all the way down the river to Hartford, where he diverted up the Little River and disembarked at the home of his uncle, Thomas Seymour. Ledyard then planted an elm across from his uncle's house on the banks of the Little River. Born to a mystic Connecticut merchant captain who had been lost at sea, John Ledyard was a nephew of Colonel William Ledyard, who would be killed in 1781 at the defense of Fort Griswold in Groton, Connecticut. In 1765, the young teenager, John Ledyard, had been sent to Hartford to the home of his paternal grandfather, John Ledyard, Esquire, to be educated. When Squire John died in 1771, Ledyard's uncle Seymour became his guardian. With his escape from Dartmouth achieved, Ledyard boldly pursued an adventurous life and became well known for his wide-ranging travels. He became a Royal Marine and went to the Pacific on Caprtain Cook's third and final voyage. The expedition, during which Captain Cook was killed in Hawaii, lasted over 4 years. Returning to the Atlantic, Ledyard was sent to Canada, but deserted because he did not want to fight his fellow Americans in the Revolution. Back in New England, he wrote an account of his travels with Captain Cook that was published in 1783, and the following year he traveled to Europe to seek backers for a fur trading venture. This was unsuccessful, but encouraged by Thomas Jefferson, who was U.S. ambassador in Paris at the time, Ledyard embarked on an audacious new expedition to travel across Russia and then cross the Bering Strait to North America, where he would make his way from Alaska all the way to Virginia. His journey was cut short when, under suspicion of being a spy, he was arrested in Irkutsk on the orders of Catherine the Great and got deported. His next ambitious plan was to explore the interior of Africa, but he passed away in Cairo in 1789, possibly from an overdose of sulfuric acid that was used to treat intestinal illness. Back in Hartford, the elm tree he had planted grew to become a local landmark. It stood near the bank of the Little River, which was called the Mill River when this map was made in 1824. The elm was across Arch Street, called School Street back then, from Thomas Seymour's house, which stood on part of the old home lot of Hartford founder Reverend Thomas Hooker. Thomas Seymour served as the first mayor of the city of Hartford from its incorporation in 1784 until 1812. In 1824, the year of this map, he hosted the Marquis de Lafayette at his home on Arch Street. Every morning, Seymour went for a swim in the Little River, even when he had to break through a coating of ice to do it. In the 1780s, Seymour set up a grist mill just west of the elm. By 1824, this property was occupied by Ward's Woolen Mill. Jumping forward 45 years, the 1869 Atlas of Hartford and Tolland counties shows that Seymour's house was still standing, but it was hemmed in to the north and west by George S. Lincoln and Company's Phoenix Iron Works. The very next year, 1870, the house was taken down. It was replaced, as shown in the 1877 bird's eye view of Hartford, by a new wing of the Lincoln Works, an industrial plant which grew to occupy property on both sides of Arch Street. Throughout all of these changes, the tree, which is not depicted on this 1877 view, continued to stand adjacent to the industrial development. Thought to be the finest elm tree in the city, it was photographed in the 1880s by Frederick S. Brown, who was documenting Connecticut's famous old trees. The author of an article on Connecticut's most notable trees that appeared in the New York Times on June 8, 1891, wrote, quote, "In the deed conveying the property on which the elm stands to its present owners is a clause, according to the tree the right to stand until it shall die a natural death. It is still a grand and rugged old tree, apparently full of life and vigor. Notwithstanding its trunk is gnarled and seamed with the work of time and weather. Many tourists and lovers visit it yearly. In the opinion of arboriculturists, earth was banked about its roots once a great many years ago, since the trunk is smallest at the ground and the lower branches are near the earth. The trunk in its smallest part is 13.5 feet in circumference, and the shadow cast by the tree is 100 feet in diameter." Unquote. Although the author spoke of the tree's life and vigor, 5 years later, on November 19, 1896, the Hartford Courant newspaper reported, quote, "The old elm had died, and it was a very large tree. The Park Commission, which had charge of it, ordered it cut down, and it has been sawed off piece by piece and removed, so that not even the fence that it overhung has been hurt. The other large elm, just east of it, is now undergoing the same fate." One can get an idea of the changes that have taken place along the riverbank from the fact that Mr. Lincoln himself distinctly recollects when steamboats drawing 9 feet of water used to sail up Little River and at an inlet just east of where the foundry now stands, unloaded grain for Imlay's mills. Unquote. Thus came to an end a living piece of Hartford's colonial history. John Ledyard's journey down the Connecticut River is a beloved part of the history of Dartmouth College and inspired the founding of the Ledyard Canoe Club. But the Hartford tree that commemorated his journey is long gone. That area of Arch Street has gone through even more dramatic changes since then, not least of which was the burying of the Little River through a conduit underground. Most recently, there's been the building of the apartments at 81 Arch Street, completed in 2019, which partly occupies the site where the Ledyard Elm had witnessed almost a century and a quarter of change in downtown Hartford, Connecticut. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and you can also subscribe to my Substack, which is linked in the description below. Thanks for watching.